Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again, it is Sunday, and that means it's time for the Texas Gun Vault Poll Question of the Week, a weekly vlog that I put out where I ask you, as my viewers and subscribers, about something that deals with guns, gun culture, politics, current events, the news, or something fun like EDC that I want to get your thoughts and opinions on. Now, this week's question deals with a range report that I made earlier in the week on a Winchester Model 1894. And it got me thinking, in a dystopian world where maybe semi-automatic firearms get banned, what other actions do you like or would prefer to move to if semi-automatic was not available? Now, as I said, I know this is kind of a political topic, and a lot of people in the comment section are going to say, that's never going to happen because we're not here to talk about the politics of banning guns. This is just one of those hypothetical what-ifs. Before I dive into the question as well, I want to apologize about the sound this week. It looks like my lavalier or my lapel mic has gone out. So I have one on order to replace it, but until I get that, I have to use my shotgun mic. So maybe the sound quality is not that good this week. So with all of that said, let's dive right into this week's poll question and see what your results are. This week, I am releasing a range report video on a Winchester Model 1894 lever-action rifle. Shooting this rifle has grown my appreciation for other types of repeating mechanisms other than semi-auto. This got me wondering about what other people's favorite non-semi-auto actions were. In a hypothetical situation where you could not own a semi-automatic rifle, I guess, or shotgun, which repeating action would you want if you could only have one? Now, it's important to remember that YouTube only gives me 5 options. I know there are more options than this, and I know there are subvariants of each one of these, but I tried to give you the most broad and common examples of some other type of repeating mechanism. Now, as I said, I know this is kind of a dystopian question. What if you really couldn't have semi-auto? What other mechanisms that can repeat would you want to use? And of course, there's pros and cons to each of them. And to be very honest with you, I think that each one of them has their merits. I like to have one of each type. After all, I am a collector. And this question also comes from my personal perspective as a collector. When it comes to my personal collection, I have a lot of semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. And why is that? Well, it's because I kind of hedge my bets. I do worry that one day certain things are going to be banned or much harder to acquire. And I know that some of these other actions like lever action or bolt action are not going to be as heavily regulated. So when it comes to my firearms investments, I go with the stuff that I might not be able to get in the future. But because of this, I really haven't built a collection of these types of actions. So that's where my perspective is and kind of where my head is when it comes to analyzing your results. But with that said, let's see what you all had to say. With only 526 votes this week, we have lever action, loaded on Sunday and shoot all week, 56%. Pump action, simplistic and never alter your shooting grip, 14%. Revolving cylinder, the advantages of a revolver but in a rifle, 3%. Bolt action, good enough for the military, so good enough for me, 26%. And something else, explain in the comments, 1%. And so, as I mentioned earlier, each one of these options has a pro and con. And I was kind of expecting people to vote based on a number of factors, just not what is maybe the most reliable, but there's also a nostalgia factor. Some people grew up shooting certain types of firearms. Also, depending if you look at these guns as a tool, a hunter that might be out in the woods would prefer one action, where if you're a sporting clay shooter, you're going to want something else. For me as a collector, there's also the coolness factor, things that I look at from a historical perspective and go, that is just really neat. I like the way that mechanism works. So let's go through each one of these and I'll talk about my personal thoughts and opinions. And first we have the lever action, and here is my Henry Big Boy X Series chambered M357 Magnum. Now, I like this gun because it's cool. This is the cool factor. It's also the gun and the option that a lot of you guys voted for, and I understand why. So what is the big advantage of lever action? Well, you get pretty darn good capacity in these tubular magazines. They're very quick to load, but also you can run these actions extremely fast. I've seen some expert marksmen run lever actions just as fast as semi-automatic. These things can also be chambered in a very wide variety of calibers, everything from 22 long rifle all the way up to 45-70 government, and I'm sure there's even bigger things they can be chambered in. They're very, very versatile guns. But for me, what is the big attraction if I had to only have a lever action rifle? And that is, when you are running the action, you kind of do have to take your hand off the stock and off the trigger. So each time you come back, you have to find it. And for me, that kind of slows me down. But as I said, I've seen people shoot these things exceptionally fast. And when you have a large part of your body moving this action, you're also going to lose your zero, or where your targets are. But that's just me. As I said, I know there's a lot of people that maybe shoot these all the time, and that's not really an issue. That's really the only downside. And I also think that when it comes to these, when it comes to loading, I think you can load other mechanisms faster. Even like bolt actions will have box magazines. Those are a little bit quicker, but you can load these relatively fast. And I just find this to also be historically the most interesting because it's an American gun. You talk about the Old West, every American loves the Old West, the frontier. When you think of the frontier, you think of lever action guns like the Henry or Winchesters. Then we have pump action. Now, I mentioned that this was just for rifles, but I kind of threw that little caveat in the reading of the poll talking about shotguns because the only pump action I own is in a shotgun. Now, the advantage to these, I really think, is the fact that you can keep your hand on the trigger and on the stock at all times. So your grip never has to change. So in a way, it's kind of like a lever action. But for me, when it comes to the pump, it's not as sophisticated and smooth of an action as maybe the lever action, as I was talking about, or a bolt action. You have a very large part of the firearm that has to move. And for me, it always seems like it's a little bit on the clunky side. Now, it's obviously an extremely reliable platform. Now, if I could not have semi-automatic, I don't think I would go with a pump action rifle or shotgun. I'd probably go with the lever action if it was my only option. As I said, it just seems like it's a little bit clunky, and it's also a lot louder. Now, some people absolutely love that sound. For me, it just sounds clunky, as I mentioned. There's nothing very attractive about that. But I know the movies make it sound really cool, but I think from a practical standpoint, it's just not. You get about the same capacity you would with a lever action because you are running that tubular magazine. But for me, it's just a little bit clunkier of a mechanism, and it requires a little bit more training and a little bit more work just because you're manipulating so much of that firearm. Then we have the revolving cylinder. Now, I don't have any rifle or shotgun with a revolving cylinder. The revolving cylinder shotguns, I think, are considered AOWs under the NFA. But I know that some people really like them because you get that reliability in the action of a revolver, but in a rifle. And there are a few companies today that are making these. So I kind of wanted to throw that in there. I was just kind of curious what people were thinking when it came to them, and if anybody would even vote for them. But it looks like 3% of you guys did, so I find that kind of fascinating. One day, I really would like to shoot a revolving cylinder rifle and just see what it's all about. Then we have the one that honestly I thought was going to win, bolt action. Yeah, bolt action has been around for a long time. Hunters use it all the time, precision shooters use it all the time, and I don't even own any bolt action rifles or modern bolt action rifles. I do have a bolt action 22 that was my great grandfather's, but I don't own anything modern. One day I will, but as I said, I've kind of avoided getting one because when it comes to my gun budget, I prefer to buy things that maybe I'm not going to be able to buy in the future. But I honestly thought this was going to win because I think it's the majority of non-semi-automatic rifles out there. There's more bolt actions than just about anything else. I know most people grew up shooting them. They're very versatile, they've been used in the military, and now we even have derivatives of the bolt action like the straight pull. Now I know some people in the comments said, hey, straight pull is the way to go. Straight pull really is a bolt action. You just don't lift up on the mechanism, pull it back, you just pull it straight back and it's quicker. So I look at that as kind of the same thing. So for this only getting 26% and not the majority, honestly, I was very surprised. But one day I promise I'm going to get into bolt action rifles. I have a few on my short list that I would want to get. And of course, they're going to be more bolt actions that have military provenance. But one day I will. But right now, I got to save up for the semi-autos that I want. And then finally, we have something else explained in the comments. Only 1%. And from just reading the comments, I think the people that voted for that went with the straight pull option. But as I said, I kind of look at that as being a derivative of bolt action. So that's what I think about this. Let's see what you guys have to say this week with the top rated comments. And our top rated comment of the week comes from The Film Guy, who says, I found the straight pull bolt to be unique in that it can be run quickly, but is still accurate like a bolt gun. I think in modern guns, Savage came out with a straight pull bolt action recently, or the old surplus Swiss rifles like the K series, K31, K11, K1911, etc. Yeah, as I said, the straight pull is really cool, and I think it's an awesome take on the bolt action, but for me, it's just a variation of the bolt action. I think also it's extremely reliable, and that's the one thing that all these actions pretty much have over semi-automatic is because you're running the action manually, they are more reliable. And then you have the military provenance of the K series like he's talking about here. I mean, how can you deny the awesomeness, accuracy, and reliability of those guns? Those things have seen world wars, survived to this day. They're still around and still beloved. You can't go wrong with that type of reputation. Then we have Michael Hearn, who says, I chose bolt action because there's less moving parts to worry about, but I still like the lever actions. They remind me of growing up watching Westerns. Yeah, and maybe that's why the lever actions won, is because of that nostalgia factor. There's nothing wrong with that. They're just pieces of Americana. But he once again went with bolt action just because it has less moving parts. And I'd have to actually wonder about that because I think that pump action would have fewer parts. But all of these actions are extremely reliable because you're manipulating them manually versus relying on the cartridge or other mechanisms to do it for you. So yeah, you can still have malfunctions, you can still have misspeeds, you can still have jams, but they're fewer and far between on each one of these. Then we have Jason Fight, who says, I love my Winchester 1894 carbine, the perfect gun for Michigan whitetail. And when I reviewed that 1894, I talked about how that was one of the most well-known and prolific sporting guns in the country. So I can appreciate the lever action for hunting, although I would think it'd be more useful for home defense and range use. I think if I was a hunter, which by the way, I'm not, I could kill a deer if I had to put food on the table, but that's just not the aspect of firearms that I'm into. I think that if I was going to do that, I'd probably go with bolt action. But as I said, the lever action in that 1894, there were over 7 million of those things made, and they were known for being just awesome hunting firearms. Then we have Alan P., who says, I have a 1949 Marlin 336 RC in 3030. I found in a pawn shop on FM 1960. I guess he's talking about the roads here in Texas. If you don't know, FM means farm to market road. It was well worn, but that rifle shoots good. Barrel is thick steel and tough. And you know, the cool thing about hearing everybody and reading all the comments about these guns is they really are nostalgic about them. Yeah, we're all pushing for semi-autos. It's the cool and new thing. But there's just something awesome about the older guns, the older actions, and going back to a more simple time. Now, I only got into guns about 10 to 12 years ago, so I was already in this when semi-autos were all the rage. And this is one of those things that I have grown to appreciate, like I mentioned in the poll. But it's so cool to hear from people that are older than me, that have lived through longer periods of time and changes in the firearms world, and they simply love the old lever actions and the bolt actions. It's great to hear them talk about it. Then we have Matt Moore with our final comment of the day, who says, that is a tough one. I love them all. You know, I agree. They're all great. And hopefully one day I'll get to shoot that revolving cylinder rifle or shotgun. Crossing my fingers, I just got to get them all crossed off my shooting bucket list. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. So that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. Nothing too serious. And the results surprised me. You guys, all want to shoot the lever action. Well, not all of you, a little bit more than half. You guys think if you can't have a semi-auto, this is the way to go. And I think it's definitely the coolest option, but I understand why others wanted the bolt action. I don't know. They're all just cool, and Matt Moore is right. I just love looking at these things and shooting them. But I still like to collect those semi-autos. So that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. If you would like to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my YouTube channel. Go over there, see what the poll is about, vote, comment, and like other people's comments so we can get the top rated comment of the week. And so as always, I appreciate your participation in getting to have these weekly communications and dialogue with you guys. I look forward to seeing what you guys say in the comment section below. So, as always, thanks for watching.